One of the signs of a good movie is when fans speculate and come up with strange conspiracy theories about what's really going on behind the story. Most of these theories will never be confirmed, but they do add something new to repeat viewings. Number 10. Filmmaker M. Night Shyamalan is known today for the shocking twists in his movies that take the audience by surprise. Some are more successful than others. According to one theory, though, the twist in one of the director's most famous films wasn't what the movie suggested. Signs was Shyamalan's third major movie and was generally well received on release. The film tells the story of a small family surviving an alien invasion while Father Graham goes through a crisis of faith. Signs was praised for its gradual tension building, and even today, the moment where one of the alien creatures is revealed in the background of a birthday party is remembered as a terrifying cinema moment. But for a lot of audience members, the twist at the end of the film let it down. It turns out that the aliens are vulnerable to water, reacting to glasses of water like they're acid. At first glance, this doesn't seem that bad. One of the only reasons the central family isn't destroyed by an alien is that Graham's younger brother, Beau, has a habit of leaving half-empty glasses of water everywhere. Most households wouldn't have this line of defense, but in general, the Earth would be a terrible place for a species vulnerable to water. Over 70% of the planet's surface is covered in the substance. Even if the aliens are somehow not vulnerable to salt water, water vapor in the air would be like breathing in toxic fumes. A species that has mastered interplanetary travel would surely be able to tell the planet is completely hostile to them. Even if they weren't aware that water was dangerous, they would probably have sent drones down first to assess the conditions before the invasion and had some kind of protective suits. But this theory suggests that the aliens aren't actually from outer space. One of the central themes in the movie is faith, particularly Graham's struggle with his faith after his wife passed away in a tragic accident. Over the course of the film, Graham renounces his title as father in the church and becomes more and more cut off from his religion. In contrast, the family's understanding of what happens to them comes from faith in the people they see on TV and books. At first, they believe crop circles are the result of nothing more than vandals. Over time, there are more and more signs that something unnatural is going on, with beams of light coming from something invisible in the sky. Nothing about these strange events makes it clear that this is the work of extraterrestrials. Rather, it's the interpretation of people the family interact with that gives them that belief. They put faith in stories of aliens rather than their own beliefs. The theory states that rather than being aliens, the creatures in Signs are actually demons. They're not vulnerable to all water, but holy water. The water left around the house by Beau is blessed, either because the house belongs to a priest or because Beau herself is blessed in some way. The family survives due to unique traits that would seem like coincidences or fitting gifts from the higher power. Furthermore, news reports state that the creatures are driven away by a solution found in 3 small cities in the Middle East. This likely refers to the important cities of the 3 major Abrahamic religions. Number 9. For a movie about ghosts and supernatural entities, the Ghostbusters films remain lighthearted and comedic. But the second movie in the series might actually have a much darker premise if one popular fan theory is to be believed. The theory begins with the end of the first Ghostbusters movie. A paranormal event is affecting the entire city of New York, but the main threat lies atop an apartment building, designed to help summon a shape-shifting god of destruction named Gozer. As the titular heroes prepare to face the entity, they're told that they'll choose the form of their destruction. One of the Ghostbusters accidentally summons a giant version of a marshmallow mascot, which wreaks havoc. In the end, the team must break one of their most important rules to destroy the dimensional portal and defeat Gozer. Early in the movie, Egon Spengler, the creator of the proton packs that traps the ghosts, warns his teammates that they cannot cross proton streams. Doing so would be disastrous. Egan describes it as like all life as you know it stopping instantly, and every molecule in their bodies being pulled apart at the speed of light. But despite this, the only way to destroy the dimensional portal and defeat Gozer is by crossing the streams. The team does this, and there's an enormous blast, but miraculously, the Ghostbusters and everyone else in the area survive. According to the director's commentary, this was supposed to be a joke about how unrealistic action movie damage actually is, but some fans believe Egan's warning came true. The theory states that the world did end, at least for the Ghostbusters. The second movie takes place in limbo, where the characters must deal with unresolved personal stories before moving on. The end of the first movie would have been a spectacular event. The movie ends with the Ghostbusters being celebrated as heroes, and there's no way anyone can deny what happened. But by the start of the second film, 5 years later, the Ghostbusters are right back where they began. Nobody believes they actually defeated the supernatural. They're accused of being fakes and banned from investigating paranormal activity. The events of the second movie played through the same plot points as the first. The crew are working unfulfilling jobs, and their supernatural beliefs are mocked. A publicized supernatural event occurs, which gets them respect and recognition. In the first movie, it's a hotel haunting. In the second, it's a court case surrounding an underground stream of supernatural slime. Finally, they both end in a city-wide paranormal event where a giant supernatural entity walks through the streets of New York. This time, though, it's an animated Statue of Liberty, powered by positive emotions. Even Dana and her young son Oscar once again are the focus of a paranormal possession and need to be rescued. For some, this is evidence that the characters are actually trapped in limbo. They're doomed to repeat the same sequence of events over and over again, never able to actually move on in the afterlife. Number 8. A dark fan theory suggests that the backstory of one of Shrek's central characters is much more disturbing than anything else in the DreamWorks movie. The original Shrek film was based on a book of the same name, but major changes were made in the adaptation. The character of Donkey appeared in the original story, but only as a minor character. In the movie adaptation, the comedic character was expanded upon and became central to the story. But Donkey's backstory has never been fully explored. Shrek features characters and cameos from many fairy tales. The audience can pick out the specific story that most of these characters are referencing, whether it's a famous story like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or a simple nursery rhyme like The Three Blind Mice. There are some generic characters like fairies and witches, and monsters like Shrek himself, but these are all common enough in children's stories. The exception to this is Donkey. The character isn't referencing a specific fairy tale story, and talking donkeys aren't common characters in fairy tales. According to the Dark Theory, one of the only stories that feature talking donkeys is Pinocchio. In both the original Italian version of the story and the later Disney adaptation, misbehaving children are turned into donkeys. Pinocchio is lured to Pleasure Island, or Toy Island in the original story. This is a place where misbehaving children can have fun away from adult authorities. They can smoke, drink alcohol, and destroy property. But as they engage in bad behavior, they're turned into donkeys. The coachman who runs the island then sells the transformed donkeys to mines, circuses, and farms. In the original story, this was a reference to donkeys being symbolic of ignorance and stupidity. Children who didn't study properly would have no choice but to get jobs doing back-breaking labor as adults. Different versions of the story have the transformation happen at different speeds. In the Disney adaptation, the final part of the transformation is when the boys lose their ability to speak. Donkeys that can still speak are sent back to the island so that they can't tell their new owners of their origin. The theory goes that Donkey was one of these boys. He didn't lose the ability to speak, but somehow managed to escape the island. There are some clues that seem to agree with this theory. In the third Shrek film, Donkey references being bullied and being given wedgies. When asked how this happened, as he wasn't wearing any clothes, Donkey just remarks that there are some things better left unsaid. This could point to him once being a human child who went through some horrifying transformation. Number 7. There are many conspiracy theories surrounding the actual sinking of the Titanic. The filming of the movie about the world's most famous sinking also has its own creepy unsolved mystery. But fans of the movie have speculated that what we see on screen isn't actually what it seems. The theory surrounds Leonardo DiCaprio's character of Jack Dawson. Jack is a steerage passenger who wins his ticket aboard the Titanic in a game of poker. On board the ship, he meets Rose, a young first-class passenger who's preparing to jump into the icy waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. Jack convinces her not to jump, and the two have a whirlwind romance. Jack helps Rose enjoy herself and gives her a new appreciation for life. Of course, the love story is doomed to a tragic end. As the Titanic sinks, Rose is stranded on a piece of debris while Jack is in the freezing water. He passes away from hypothermia before Rose is rescued by a lifeboat and lives to tell Jack's story decades later. The film moved moviegoers and has remained a much-loved classic ever since, but some of those rewatching the film have questions about certain details of Jack's character. It's no secret that the love story of Jack and Rose was fictional. Rose's character did have some inspiration from the life of Beatrice Wood, but Wood was never a passenger on the Titanic, and Rose is mostly a work of fiction. Jack, too, is fictional, and some believe this is true in more ways than one. When Jack first rescues Rose, he warns her about the icy waters. He tells her a story about ice fishing on Lake Wissota, a man-made lake in Wisconsin. But that lake was created in 1917, 5 years after the sinking of the Titanic. Another one of Jack's stories suggests he knew something about the future. He tells Rose about selling portraits on Santa Monica Pier and promises to take her there so that they could ride the roller coaster. The Santa Monica Pier had been open to the public since 1909, so it was possible Jack had sold portraits there, but the pleasure pier with the roller coaster didn't exist until 1916. Not only does Jack show knowledge about places that don't exist yet, but his entire outfit seems out of place. His hairstyle and backpack more closely resembles something a young man might have been wearing in the 40s, not the 20s, and the filtered cigarettes he smokes weren't patented until 1925. The theory suggests that Jack was a time traveler. Even the fact that he had to gamble for his ticket is seen as evidence of this, as he didn't have any currency from the time period to purchase one. The Titanic's director, James Cameron, went to great lengths to achieve accuracy in this movie, so having these random out-of-place details doesn't make much sense. The fact that they all come from Jack's character only makes them stand out even more. According to the theory, Jack was sent back in time to save Rose, but in doing so, he may have doomed the lives of thousands of people. As Rose was such a wealthy passenger, there's a chance the Titanic would have stopped or slowed down to send out rescue boats if she had fallen overboard. The ship would have avoided the fateful iceberg and its tragic fate. Some versions of the story state that this was Jack's main goal. The sinking of the Titanic was important for future events. Number 6. Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith was the third and most well-received movie in the space opera's prequel trilogy. While the first two movies were not well-liked by fans, the third film helped to bridge the gap between these newer movies and the original trilogy. That doesn't mean it wasn't without its faults, though. One of the biggest problems fans had with the movie was the demise of Padme, Anakin Skywalker's wife and the mother of Luke and Leia. In the final act of the movie, Anakin and his former mentor, Obi-Wan, engage in a cinematic battle on the hell-like planet of Mustafa. The fight leaves Anakin badly wounded, missing limbs and burned by lava. There seems little chance he'll survive, and Obi-Wan leaves him there. Before he expires, he's rescued by Palpatine, the secretive figure who's just been exposed as the Sith, Dark Sidious. Anakin goes through some grueling medical treatments, which ultimately save his life, or a version of him, in the form of Darth Vader. At the same time, Padme goes into labor. She was attacked by Anakin before the battle, but was still alive and breathing on her own when she was taken to a medical center. But after the birth of her twin children, Padme's health takes a turn for the worse. According to a medical droid attending her, there's nothing physically wrong with Padme. There's nothing medically they can do to save her life. The droid states that it doesn't know why it's losing her, but it seems that she has lost the will to live. Padme passes away, preparing the way for the events of the original trilogy. When Anakin awakes, he asks about her, but is told that in his anger, he took her life. This seals his final turn to the dark side, and the birth of the ominous villain that fans knew. But many fans were dissatisfied with this ending, particularly the explanation that Padme lost the will to live. She would be understandably heartbroken by her husband's turn to the dark side, but her character had always been more than Anakin's love interest. She was a dedicated political figure, fought for her people, and was now a mother. Padme would have known now more than ever that she had a reason to carry on. Rather than giving up, a fan theory suggests that Padme's life force was stolen from her. According to the theory, Palpatine transferred Padme's life force into Anakin using the Force. Scenes of Anakin's transformation are intercut with Padme's medical treatment. This may have been more than a simple cinematic and symbolic choice. The two things could be connected. The life transference is why Anakin survived such horrifying wounds and why Padme passed for seemingly no reason. The medical droid would have recognized her life force draining for unexplained reasons, but wouldn't necessarily have connected this to the Force. This wasn't a power that most Force users were aware of, let alone a medical droid. This would explain why Palpatine knew that Padme had passed away. The power was hinted at in Palpatine's story of Darth Plagueis, who was able to use the Force to save lives. It's also inexplicably part of the sequel trilogy. The theory adds a darker twist to the events of the movie. Anakin's motivation for joining the dark side was to learn the power that would ultimately cost the life of the person he wanted to protect. Number 5. Mary Poppins is one of the most recognizable characters in fiction. But even though her story is incredibly popular, the origin of this mysterious character remains unknown. That means there are plenty of fan theories about who or what Mary Poppins really is. According to one fan theory, she may be closely related to another popular British fictional character. Mary Poppins first appeared on screen in 1964 in the Disney adaptation of a book published 30 years prior. The magical nanny appears just as the Banks family hit a time of crisis. The family desperately needs someone to look after their misbehaving children and to bring them all closer together. The character arrives and uses song, dance, and magic to resolve the family's issues. At the end of the movie, she departs without telling her new friends. For some, the story follows the general plot points of a typical episode of Doctor Who, albeit without any alien monsters. An episode of the popular TV show will typically begin with the Doctor arriving on some new location, just as a problem is discovered. Using futuristic technology, charm, and wit, the Doctor is able to solve whatever crisis is happening. Along the way, they help the people they encounter learn something new about themselves and usually leave them in a better position than before the Doctor arrived. At the end of the encounter, the Doctor leaves, often without saying goodbye. The actions are eerily similar, but there is other evidence for the theory. Mary Poppins carries a bag which is much larger on the inside. This is a famous feature of Gallifreyan technology, the same thing that makes the Doctor's TARDIS bigger on the inside. Fans have also pointed to Mary's umbrella as being similar to the TARDIS. Not only is it how she travels from place to place, but it also seems to have a personality of its own, just like the TARDIS. The theory states that Mary Poppins is a Time Lord, just like the Doctor. The two characters seem to have similar personalities. They're both self-confident and almost arrogant, but generally want what's best for those around them. Bert, the singing chimney sweep, may have once been her companion, as the two clearly went on adventures together. This would also explain why Mary doesn't appear to have aged when she reappears 25 years later for the recent sequel movie. Mary Poppins doesn't travel through time like everyone else. The Time Lord theory isn't the only one that's been put forward to explain Mary Poppins' origins. Another darker theory suggests that she might be a similar entity to the monster in Stephen King's It. In It, a shape-shifting monster terrorizes the town of Derry every 27 years. Pennywise preys on children, luring them away from their parents with balloons and paper toys before tormenting them and literally feeding off their fear. At first, there doesn't seem to be any similarities between the monster and Mary Poppins. But this fan theory suggests that Mary feeds on children's laughter or joy rather than fear. In the second movie, she returns a paper toy to a child named Georgie, in a much less sinister manner than Pennywise. She also uses a balloon to fly, can manipulate light sources, and is able to use a child's imagination for her magic. Number 4. When the Wachowskis created the Matrix movies, they wanted to make something that would make the audience think and theorize about the story. It was a goal that was definitely achieved, with countless theories coming out to explain various points. One of the most popular and controversial of these theories was that the real world inside the story is nothing but another level of the Matrix. The Matrix story is built on the work of various philosophers. Since ancient times, people have been asking how we can know that the real world is actually real. This thinking would eventually develop into the simulation theory. Everything we know today is nothing but a computer program being run by some being outside our reality. In the Matrix movies, that simulation is being run by machines that take over the world. Humans are kept alive and used as a power source. To keep them from fighting back, their minds are put in a simulation which resembles the world of today, or of the 90s when the film was released. The simulation isn't perfect, and it's in human nature to question our reality. This leads to a small amount of humans being able to escape the Matrix and enter the real world. In the real world, the humans live in the city of Zion. This is the last human city on Earth and is actually located deep underground. The surface of the planet was rendered inhospitable in the earlier war between humans and machines, and life in the real world is harsh and difficult, but the humans see living free in reality as better than living a more peaceful existence in a false world. But according to a popular fan theory, they don't really have that choice. The theory suggests that the city of Zion and the entire so-called real world is nothing but another level of the simulation. Later movies reveal that the machines are very aware of the city and have actually been allowing it to survive the entire time. The machines are aware that humans will try to escape from the false reality, so decided to provide them with another level of the Matrix. This would allow them to think they've escaped, satiating the rebellious spirit while keeping them under control. The theory would resolve many problems from the series, but some fans think it would only lead to more unanswered questions. In the second movie, the character Neo is seen using his powers even while in the real world. Neo is the One, and gifted with the ability to see the code of the simulation and manipulate the Matrix. It effectively gives him telekinesis and other powers while inside the simulation. But in the Matrix Reloaded, those powers are put to use in Zion. This shouldn't have been possible unless he was still manipulating code in this version of reality. Another problem this would solve is how Agent Smith is able to enter the real world. Smith can possess anyone in the Matrix, but he should be a program limited only to the simulated world. That doesn't stop him from infecting the mind of one of the Resistance members and entering the real world using that character's body. Those who believe the theory have pointed out that smaller moments could indicate Zion isn't real. The theory is one of the most popular attached to the Matrix series, but has just as many detractors. More than anything, the Matrix within a Matrix movie would make the events of the series pointless, including the sacrifices made for the good of humanity. Later movies didn't confirm or deny the theory. Even if it isn't true, it provides an interesting way to look at the films and rewatches. Number 3. The Jurassic Park series has always involved genetic experimentation in some way. But according to one dark fan theory, the newer Jurassic World films took this in a disturbing new direction. The theory suggests that the Indominus Rex, which terrorized staff and visitors alike in 2015's Jurassic World, was actually part human. The Indominus Rex is an unnatural creature created in a laboratory. In Jurassic World, the dinosaur-themed park has been operating successfully for years. But now, visitors are growing bored of dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures brought back to life millions of years after they went extinct. The company needs new attractions, and so designs new creatures that never existed. The Indominus Rex is the latest attraction. The creature is based on the famous T-Rex, but the DNA of many other animals has been incorporated into the creature. This genetic experimentation has been going on since the very first Jurassic Park movie, where frog DNA is mixed with that extracted from a mosquito trapped in amber. But while that was for the purpose of filling in parts of the genetic sequence that weren't preserved, the scientists in Jurassic World intend to use other animal DNA to make the I-Rex a more terrifying creature. Over the course of the movie, it's revealed that the I-Rex has genes from various dinosaurs, including the Gigantosaurus and Velociraptor. But the creature also has DNA from species alive today, like the cuttlefish and pit viper. Each of these creatures gives the I-Rex unique characteristics. Some of these were purposefully designed by the scientists, while others are unintended consequences that make the monster even more terrifying than originally planned. But the theory suggests that some characteristics cannot be explained by any named animal. Parts of the genetic sequence are kept top secret throughout the film. According to the theory, some of that is actually human DNA. The theory was actually put forward before the movie was ever released. Fans who watched the trailer spotted the I-Rex's prehensile hands and creative problem solving and speculated that a human-dinosaur hybrid would be revealed. Even though that reveal never came in the film, that hasn't stopped speculation. The I-Rex is shown to be extremely intelligent, far more than any other dinosaur in the film series. Early in the film, it tricks staff members into thinking it's escaped its enclosure by leaving claw marks on the walls and removing its heat signature. This lures the humans into a trap, which allows the I-Rex to actually escape. The creature also remembers a tracking device that was implanted into its back. Not only that, but it realizes what the device does and is able to claw it out. Rather than just leaving it behind, the I-Rex uses the device as bait for a trap, once again luring the humans to a location where they can be ambushed. The movie seems to suggest that the I-Rex gets its intelligence from the velociraptor, but it's clear that this creature is more intelligent than the raptors. Before the Jurassic World movie was ever imagined, a planned script for Jurassic Park 4 would feature human-dinosaur hybrids. These were supposed to be used for military purposes. The creatures looked extremely strange, which led to the idea being scrapped. But this fan theory suggests that the idea wasn't completely scrapped after all, only the concept designs. Number 2. The Blair Witch Project had a huge impact on the horror genre that's still being felt today. When the movie was first released in 1999, the marketing made it seem as if this found footage style film was actual found footage. People left the cinemas questioning what they had just seen and whether it could possibly be real. Even today, we know that the movie was nothing more than a work of fiction, but speculation about what actually happened continues. One theory suggests that the titular Blair Witch was not real. The real villains of the movie were two of its stars. The Blair Witch Project focuses on the story of film students Heather, Josh, and Mike. They're producing a documentary about the Blair Witch, a legendary supernatural monster that supposedly lives in the Black Hills Forest near Burkittsville, Maryland. According to the legend, the witch has a supernatural influence on those who enter the forest. The students are warned not to enter the woods, but do anyway. The students become lost and start to see and hear strange things. At one point, Josh separates from the group. Heather and Mike try to find him and are drawn to a cabin deep in the forest. There, they also become separated. The final part of the movie is filmed entirely by Heather and shows her coming across Mike standing in the basement of the cabin, facing the corner. Something unseen attacks Heather, and the movie ends. At no point in the film is the Blair Witch shown. Her influence is felt throughout the forest. The characters in the audience hear strange noises, and the mysterious piles of stones and stick figures seem to be her doing, but the monster herself is never seen. According to this theory, that's because she never existed. The story of the Blair Witch is nothing more than a local legend, but it's one that Heather clearly buys into. When they interview residents before entering the forest, it's Heather who seems most interested in the story. She's already open to experiencing something supernatural when entering the forest, so when she comes across strange things, she automatically connects them to the story. But the theory suggests that everything supernatural is actually the work of Josh and Mike. For some unknown reason, the two men are plotting to take Heather's life. Some versions of the theory state that this was the entire point of the project. The intention was always to lure Heather into a secluded location, torment her, and then take her life. Josh is obviously able to slip out of the tent at night without waking anybody. That's how he managed to separate the group and disappear. He could easily be the one planting the mysterious stick figures in stone piles. After disappearing, he leaves behind artifacts to make it seem as if something terrible has happened. Mike is the only one who gets rid of the map, tossing it into a creek. He's never able to explain why he does this. After Josh goes missing, he helps to lead Heather to the cabin before running ahead. This gives him enough time to get to the basement, where he stands in the corner and distracts Heather before Josh attacks her. One problem with this theory is the fact that Heather has the compass for most of the movie. She's the one who leads the group, but it could be easy to mess with the compass, driving Heather's paranoia further. Another issue is why they would film it at all if they intended to take Heather's life. According to the lore of the movie, Mike and Josh are also missing, so they may have decided to run away and use the footage to fake their demise too. Number 1. The 1993 film Groundhog Day had such an impact on pop culture, it renamed the trope that is still common in fiction. When Bill Murray's character Phil gets trapped in a time loop, he relives the same day over and over again until he finally manages to escape. But even though the film has come to define the time loop trope, the cause of that loop remains a mystery. If one theory is to be believed, it's the work of the devil, a character that shows up pretty early in the movie. The film follows Phil Connors, a self-centered TV weatherman who has to cover the town's Groundhog Day event on February 2nd. Phil hates the small town and the people in it, and is obviously very unenthusiastic about the festivities. At the end of the day, a storm rolls in, and Phil has to spend the night in the town again. But when he wakes up, it's February 2nd again. Phil relives the same day over and over again. Exactly how many times is never specified, but theorists have speculated it could have been decades or longer. He initially uses the loop for selfish reasons, trying to trick his love interest Rita into falling for him. But in the end, it's only when he completes a completely selfish day and solves the problems of the townspeople that he's able to wake up on February 3rd. But according to the theory, the only interaction that matters is one with a minor character. Early in Phil's first experience on February 2nd, he runs into Ned Ryerson. Ned claims to be a friend from school, though Phil doesn't remember him. He tries to sell Phil life insurance and ignores his attempts to get away. In the end, Phil refuses and steps off the curb into a puddle. Ned remarks that the first step is a doozy and laughs. The theory goes that this referred to the first step in the time loop, and Ned was trying to sell Phil more than life insurance. The reason why Phil doesn't recognize Ned is because they never went to school together. Ned is actually the devil in disguise, and when Phil refuses him, he traps him in a hellish loop. Some versions of the theory state that this is to teach Phil a lesson. The devil would be drawn to someone as selfish as Phil and trap him in the time loop as a cosmic punishment. It's only when he atones for his crimes that he's finally allowed to be free. A much darker theory is simply that Ned wanted Phil's soul. Ned isn't only selling life insurance, but many other policies. It could well be that one of them was for his immortal soul. The interaction with Ned becomes one of the repeating events of the movie. Phil tries multiple ways to get Ned to leave him alone, but on his final day, he's relieved that Phil signed up for many different policies. In the film, it's just another way that Phil helps the townspeople with their problems, but it could also be that the time loop finally wore him down into selling his soul. The theory puts a dark and sinister twist on a family film, and could mean Phil is in for a much worse time than the Groundhog Day time loop. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.